The real downfall of the spectacular Spider-Man didn't start with low ratings. It started with a deal that changed Hollywood forever. This is part 2. The Walt Disney Company announced it was acquiring Marvel Entertainment for $4 billion. Overnight, the entire chessboard flipped. Disney didn't just buy Iron Man and Captain America. They bought the underlying fundamental rights to Spider-Man. Now, Disney knew they couldn't touch the live-action movies. Sony's contract from the 90s was ironclad. But television? Television was a different story. Disney was launching a brand new cable network called Disney XD. They needed flagship shows. They looked at their newly acquired Marvel catalog and realized it was absolutely insane that the biggest superhero in the world was currently starring in a hit cartoon on a rival network. Disney executives marched into the boardroom and essentially said, "We want Spider-Man on our channel." What followed was a high-stakes corporate trade that essentially doomed our favorite show. Sony at this time was gearing up to reboot their movie universe with Andrew Garfield in The Amazing Spider-Man. But to make that movie, they needed a few concessions and timeline extensions from Marvel regarding the live-action rights. Disney saw their opening. They sat down with Sony and proposed a trade. "We will give you the live-action movie concessions you need if you give us back the television animation rights to Spider-Man." Sony, knowing that movies make billions of dollars while cartoons only make millions, agreed. They signed the paper. They handed the television rights back to Disney. Fans panicked. But then, a glimmer of hope. People thought, wait, if Disney has the TV rights and Disney wants a hit show for Disney XD, they can just take Spectacular Spider-Man, move it to their network, and fund Season 3 themselves. This is where the corporate autopsy gets grim, because that is where the legal trap snapped shut. Yes, Disney now owned the rights to make a Spider-Man cartoon, but remember Chapter 2. Sony produced Spectacular. Sony's Culver Entertainment owned the specific character designs. They owned the vocal tracks, the theme song, and the physical episodes of Seasons 1 and 2. It created the ultimate Mexican standoff. Sony legally could not make Season 3, because they had just traded the Spider-Man television rights to Disney. But Disney legally could not make Season 3 either, because if they continued the storyline of Spectacular Spider-Man, they would be using Sony's proprietary designs and Sony's continuity. Disney would have had to pay massive licensing fees to their direct rival, Sony, just to air the show on Disney XD. The show became a corporate hostage. Neither side could legally produce it without the other, and neither corporation was willing to split the profits. Greg Weisman and his team were forced to watch, paralyzed, as their 65-episode masterpiece was torn apart by a legal technicality. It wasn't canceled because of bad ratings. It wasn't canceled because kids didn't buy the toys. It was canceled because of a loophole. And instead of compromising to save a beloved piece of art, Disney decided to burn it all down and start from scratch. Disney is a master of brand synergy. When they bought Marvel, they didn't just want to tell good stories. They wanted a marketing machine. They looked at Spectacular Spider-Man and saw a problem. The show was too isolated. Greg Weisman had built a beautiful, self-contained universe, but Disney was building the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The Avengers movie was just around the corner in 2012. Disney needed a cartoon that would introduce kids to Nick Fury, S.H.I.E.L.D., and an interconnected roster of heroes. So in 2012, Disney XD premiered Ultimate Spider-Man. The tonal shift gave fans whiplash. Gone was the fluid kinetic animation of South Korea, replaced by a stiffer, flash-based style. Gone were the deep emotional arcs of Peter struggling to pay rent or balance his relationships. Instead, Peter Parker was immediately recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D., handed a high-tech flying motorcycle. The show constantly broke the fourth wall. Peter would freeze time, look at the camera, and make a goofy joke like he was starring in a superhero sitcom.
"I'd advise against making another poor decision."
I've done a lot of good as Spider-Man, but I've also made life more dangerous for my Aunt May and everyone else close to me. How many people have I hurt by being Spider-Man? Now Ock and his Sinister Six...
Now, to be fair to Ultimate Spider-Man, it wasn't trying to be a prestige drama. It was aiming for a younger, wider demographic, and in that regard, it succeeded. But for fans of Spectacular, it felt like an insult. But if you want to know just how ruthless Disney's pursuit of brand synergy was, you have to look at what they did to Josh Keaton. Josh Keaton wasn't just the voice of Peter Parker.
By and allowing someone to suffer or die because you do nothing.
For an entire generation, he was Spider-Man. even after Spectacular was caught in the Disney-Sony hostage situation and canceled. Fans held out hope that they would at least get to hear Keaton voice the character in other Marvel projects. And for a brief moment, they did. Right around the time Ultimate Spider-Man was being developed, Marvel had another critically acclaimed cartoon airing called Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. In Season 2, the Avengers showrunners wrote an episode featuring Spider-Man, and they brought in Josh Keaton to voice him. Keaton went into the booth, he recorded his lines. The episode was fully animated, the audio was mixed, the episode was entirely finished and ready to air. And then, the Disney executives stepped in. Disney was about to launch Ultimate Spider-Man starring Drake Bell. The executives looked at the finished Avengers episode and decided that having Josh Keaton voice Spider-Man on the same network would confuse the brand. They wanted a unified corporate voice for the character across all media to sell the new show. So, Disney ordered the animation studio to scrap Josh Keaton's entirely finished performance. They brought Drake Bell into the recording booth, had him dub over Keaton's lines, and erased Josh Keaton from the episode entirely. It was a devastating slap in the face. Disney didn't just cancel Spectacular Spider-Man. They actively scrubbed its leading actor out of an entirely different show just to force Ultimate Spider-Man down the audience's throats. It was the ultimate proof that artistic continuity meant absolutely nothing in the face of corporate synergy. Here is the brutal truth of the corporate autopsy. Disney didn't care, because Ultimate Spider-Man was a financial juggernaut. By removing the complex, serialized storytelling, Disney made a show that could be aired in any order on Saturday mornings. Kids didn't need to watch Season 1 to understand Season 3. And more importantly, by stuffing the show with guest stars like Wolverine, Captain America, and Taskmaster, and giving Peter Shield tech like the Spider Cycle, Disney created an endless pipeline for new action figures. Spectacular Spider-Man was built to be a great television show. Ultimate Spider-Man was built to be a commercial. And in the eyes of the executives holding the spreadsheets, the commercial won. Ultimate ran for 4 seasons, totaling over 100 episodes, completely dwarfing Spectacular's run. So, what did we actually lose? What was supposed to happen in Season 3 and beyond? Because Greg Weisman is incredibly interactive with his fanbase, we actually know a lot about the lost roadmap. The master plan was always 65 episodes, culminating in Peter's high school graduation. Season 3 would have plunged Peter into total darkness. Harry Osborn was set to take up the glider, blaming Spider-Man for his father's supposed death. We were going to get the introduction of Scorpion, Mr. Negative, and Hobgoblin. Even crazier, Weisman had planned for direct-to-DVD animated movies to bridge the gaps between seasons. One of these movies was going to cover Peter and his classmates going to Florida for spring break. Sounds fun, right? Until you realize the villain for the spring break movie was going to be the Lizard, loose in the swamps of Florida. We were robbed of seeing Eddie Brock's ultimate redemption. We were robbed of Cletus Cassidy becoming Carnage in this stunning art style. For 14 years, the cast and crew considered the show dead and buried. The legal stalemate between Sony and Disney remained practically frozen in carbonite. But then, in 2023, a tiny miracle happened. In Sony's animated masterpiece, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Miguel O'Hara is walking through the headquarters of the Spider Society, and there, standing in the background, is the unmistakable, simplified design of the spectacular Spider-Man. But it wasn't just a visual cameo. Sony brought back Josh Keaton, the original voice of Peter Parker, to record a brand new line of dialogue. It was only a few seconds.
We know it's hard, but it's the truth, Miles.
It didn't undo the cancellation. It didn't magically greenlight Season 3. But for the fans and for the creators who poured their souls into those 26 episodes, it was an acknowledgement, a confirmation that this specific Peter Parker was still out there, swinging through his universe, surviving the corporate apocalypse that tried to erase him. The death of Spectacular Spider-Man remains one of the greatest tragedies in modern animation. It proves that no matter how perfect the art is, it is always at the mercy of the executives holding the checkbook. Sony's monopoly gave the show life, but Disney's multi-billion-dollar buyout built the legal trap that killed it. Thanks for watching this corporate autopsy. If you want to see more deep dives into the boardrooms that control your favorite media, hit the subscribe button and let me know in the comments which franchise we should autopsy next. Until then, keep an eye on the fine print.